Everyone, welcome to your current affairs classes. So I hope you have gone through the earlier classes and you are writing the questions which you are provided. You have started your means current affairs answer writing practice. If you have any doubts, kindly feel free to reach out to me. Okay, now let's begin today's current affairs. Okay, today is 26th of March. This is your title page of the Hindu today. What does it reads? It reads that the government opposition call for reforms in the collegium system. Okay. Now, if you remember, अगर आपको याद होगा, तो hardly a couple of days back, we discussed about the alleged corruption case of a Delhi High Court judge, Justice Verma, and we spoke about the appointment system, the impeachment process of the judges of both High Court and the Supreme Court. Okay. Now, they're talking about the reforms in the collegium system. I hope you know the word from that particular class. Collegium, the system of body which takes into the list of the person who are supposed to be joining the High Court and Supreme Court. So this is a body which makes the recommendation to the Union Law Ministry. Okay. The ministry then further looks into the recommendations, finalizes the name and sends it to the president for the final appointment. Okay. Is that clear? I hope things are clear so far. Okay. Let's proceed further then. Now, let's dive into the whole issue and the whole scenario working around the collegium system. What are the challenges associated with the collegium system? It can be, and it is, of course, all the time one of the most important of the questions which you should be always prepared of in terms of your GS2. When you complete your GS2 and you look into the possible questions coming from High Court and the whole of the judiciary, collegium system is going to be one of the most important topics. Okay, so let's dive into it. Now, as we know that the collegium system is a system, is a body which is required for the appointment and transfer of the judges, okay, of both the High Court and the Supreme Court. Okay, they are not looking into the appointments and the transfers of the district courts. Okay, they're looking into the two of the most superior courts of the hierarchy. Okay, the Supreme Court and the higher courts. Okay, now if you will see, this collegium system itself has evolved over the period of time. Okay, there has been various cases, various famous cases which itself become a kind of prelims oriented question for you. Okay, so now this collegium system has no particular affiliation to the constitution. It is not marked in the constitution. It is reformed by the various acts of the parliaments and the various judgments of the Supreme Court. Okay, now if we look into the evolution, this evolution has started from the first judge's case, as commonly as remarked as first judge's case of 1981. Okay, so what was happening prior to 1981 was that while the appointments are supposed to be taking place, there was recommendations which were sent by the Chief Judicial House, that is the Supreme Court. Okay, however, it was not mandatory take into the concern of those recommendations. There are a couple of instances where the most senior most judge was not made the Chief Justice of India. There were some political apprehensions regarding that. Now, the judicial system was not happy with the politics barging into, when the executive was interfering in the due process of appointment of the judicial. Getting it? So basically, there was a tussle going on, and the judiciary was not happy. So, in order to make sure that the process of appointment becomes fairer, okay, without much of a political interference, it's free from the lieu of this political system. A lot of evolution happened, and as we were discussing, the first step was the first judge's case, which declared that the Chief Justice recommendation, okay, is not okay, that the it declared that the Chief Justice recommendation on this appointments and transfers is not mandatory. So, if required, it can be refused. If required, it can be sidelined. Getting it? Now, the reason has to be, of course, आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते कि आप किसी भी on the surface of it कोई politically alive दिखने वाले reasons की वजह से आप उसे transfer वो recommendations को आप sideline कर दें. There has to be some kind of congent reasons, some really important reasons. Maybe there are some kind of there are some allegations of corruption or one or the another, one of the potent enough reasons which is good enough to sideline that particular Chief Justice's recommendation on the further appointment and the transfers. Now what it is happening, इससे हो क्या रहा है? इससे हो ये रहा है that the executive is having more heavy weight. Okay, they are having the heaviest say in the transfer and the appointments of the judges. Because ultimately, if executive mana kar raha hai, if executive is denying, that transfer is not going to happen, that appointment is not going to happen. Okay, so if you understand, in the first judge's case, it was the executive having more say than the judiciary. Okay, so of course, over the span of time, the judiciary got to understand that in this method, there is a lot of political interference which is happening in terms of the appointment of the judges. Okay, so to further refine it, came the second judge's case. In the second judge's case, after 12 years of the first judge's case, that was in 1993. In this case, the Supreme Court said that the idea of the appointment of the judges, which says that there has to be a recommendation. Now, this consultation, this recommendations coming from the judiciary are not something which is just a mere consultation. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये सिर्फ एक बातचीत का तरीका है कि सिर्फ एडवाइस लेनी है. This advice is the final word. This consultation means concurrence, कि जो हम बोल रहे हैं वो आपको actually करना है. Getting it? समझ में आ रहा है आपको? So basically, they said that when the Supreme Court is recommending some name for the appointment or the transfer, you cannot, the executive cannot sideline it. You are supposed to actually finally act on that particular recommendation. There is no other way out. But to make sure that those recommendations, जो नाम हम भेज रहे हैं, they have some kind of merit in it, right? So we'll make sure that it is coming not just from one person's ideas, not just that the CGI is saying so that we are doing it. In order to avoid that, they introduced the collegium system, a body that apart from CGI, there will be two more judges, the two of the senior most judges of the Supreme Court. They all will form a body and recommend the names. Those names will be recommended by the majority of the 3-member body. Getting it? आई बात समझ में? So now, judiciary has taken the bigger say compared to the executive. Getting it? Okay. So far, so clear. Moving on. Now, here there was Chief Justice plus 2 senior most judges. So 1 plus 2. Getting it? Now, on the president recommendation, this process was further broadened up in 1998 in the third judge's case. This collegium system was further enhanced by making sure that those names which are recommended, those names which are coming for the recommendation, are coming from more of a diverse body. So they added 2 more people, 2 more judges into the collegium system. Now that particular name which is coming from the majority of, say, of this 5-member body. So more refined हो रहा है. पहले 81 में there was only one person recommending it. So हो सकता है there could be some kind of nepotism ideas, or हो सकता है कि there could be something like a very narrow perspective, narrow mindset. There could be some particular affiliation that Chief Justice can appoint more judges into High Court or Supreme Court from, let's say, the state he belongs to, right? So that could be a case. तो जितना ज्यादा आप बॉडी को डाइवर्सिफाई कर रहे हो, उतना ज्यादा आप मेक श्योर कर रहे हो that their system is based on more merit oriented manner, not one person's rule, no dictatorship kind of approach. Okay, now again, judiciary greater than executive. Further, the fourth judge's case, or the National Judicial Appointment Commission, they preferred an independent body, appointment commission, a body which is going to be recommending these names for the appointments and the transfers. Okay, so if you'll understand, that made somewhat executive more than judiciary, because the role of judiciary was diluted. It was trying to end the collegium system, but the judiciary gave its verdict in its fourth judge's case that this is unconstitutional in nature. Getting it? So NJSE was dissolved before it could come into life. Okay, getting it? I hope that's clear. Now let's look into, after understanding how collegium system is based, let's look into what are the issues which are always a kind of sensational news. Over the period of time, जब से NJSE को dissolve किया है, तब से there is a lot of time that there is a demand that our constitution is based on basically checks and balances, but it is believed that the judiciary appointing its own people is working beyond the idea of checks and balances. Getting it? That there is no role of legislature or executive. Say, executive ko executive nahi chun rahe. They are being chosen by the legislature, and the legislature is chosen by the people. But judiciary is choosing its own people. Getting it? Judiciary is appointing its own people. So basically, there is no checks and balances on it, if you will see. There is no one to look into this matters. Okay? Yes or no? Okay. Now, if you will understand, if you look closely, the issues are the exclusion of executive itself. From the whole process, there is a complete sidelining of the executive. Something which was there in 1993. That executive was having role. Something they was there in 1981. But then executive was completely sidelined. Right? So basically, they are not accountable. There is no accountability measure on the appointment system. It is a very opaque and behind the door process. See, names are recommended, but no one is telling that how we are coming to those 4 recommending names. Now recently, not exactly recently, but there was some 4-5 months back, there was a news which gathered too much attention. So there was a judge, woman judge, who was being appointed, to one of the high courts had allegations of having stereotypes against a particular religion. Getting it? So it was questioned. The idea of collegium system was questioned. Then how this particular judge you are recommending into the further higher up the ladder? What is the particular thing which you have seen? Even right now, अगर आप इस Justice Verma के case में देखेंगे, तो so the yesterday's news was that they are allegations. So they are transferring Justice Verma from Delhi High Court to Ahmedabad High Court. So who is looking into its transfer? Again, the collegium system. And now, if you understand, someone who has been accused of having too much money in his house, you have just transferred him. What are the grounds of this transfer? Should not be there any particular kind of case should be lodged. Should not be, there should not be any transfer. However, there should be like justice should be set aside for some time till the time he is not cleared of any other charges. Yes or no? So basically, exclusion of executive is leading to the decline in the accountability of this appointment system. Okay. Moving on, second point. It also leads to chances of favoritism. The issue of nepotism as we discussed in appointments. Because the collegium system is not providing you the kind of what are the merits, what are the testing criteria for all these candidates. Getting it? That how you are finally coming on to the conclusion of selecting these particular names. So a lot is questioned on this absolute non-transparent approach. ये behind the doors वाली जो approach होती है in a democracy, it is going against the fundamental ethos of democracy. Okay? Yes or no? Apart from that, the other issues related to collegium system, if we will see, the idea of checks and balances, which is being violated by the collegium system. If you understand what's the checks and balances, the idea is that if you look into the fundamental pillars of our democracy, that is executive, legislature, judiciary, everyone is supposed to having some kind of say on the other to make sure that they are not crossing its boundaries. If executive fails to perform its duty, it's the legislature will remove the executive. If legislature is failing to do its duty, judiciary will sound it unconstitutional. But what are the checks we have on the judiciary? On the face of it, it appears right that they are free to do whatsoever they can. Getting it? And if that's the case, how can you say that they are some kind of balance? They are all three are equal. It looks like that judiciary considering themselves superior of them all. However, that's not the case. It's the skepticism. It's the worry around people. And if that's the worry, we need to work towards making sure that that's not the case, that there is equal balance among the three of the strongest pillar of our fundamental democracy. Getting it? So we need to make sure that the immense powers which the collegium system is giving to the judiciary needs to be checked. Okay? And what can we do in this particular sense is that we can think about that since NJSC was deemed as unconstitutional by the apex body, apex lawmaking body, apex decision making body in terms of judiciary, that is Supreme Court, we need to make sure that there should be a fine discussion opened up between the other two houses, legislature, judiciary. एक discussion, एक panel बनाना चाहिए जिससे NJSC के line पे, on the lines of NJSC, you can make another kind of constitution or a statutory body, एक independent body जो कि appointment system के बारे में चीजों को और fine tune कर सके. और ये जो opacity है, okay, ये जो against transparency ethos जा रहे हैं, अगेंस्ट चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस ethos जा रहे हैं, उस चीज को रोकते हुए एक कोलैबोरेटिव प्रोसेस में, एक कंटिन्यूअस प्रोसेस में बोथ एग्जीक्यूटिव और जुडिशरी को इंक्लूड करते हुए एक फाइन ट्यून प्रोसेस बनाए. Getting it? I hope that's clear. Okay. Now, moving on to our next article. One of the op-eds discussed that the geographically southern areas of our country, that the geographically southern areas of our country, the states, are facing less GDP growth compared to the average of Indian GDP growth. Getting it? So basically पूरे नेशन में जो एवरेज ग्रोथ है इंडिया की ग्रोथ होने की, इफ यू विल सी द सदर्न स्टेट्स उस ग्रोथ रेट तक नहीं पहुंच पा रहे हैं. Okay, and that's the case with all of the geographically southern region of Indian states. Okay, if you will see in the map, you will see that on an average India का growth rate है GDP growth rate 9%, while Tamil Nadu has 8.2%, Telangana 7.4, Karnataka 6.6, further drops down to 6.5 in Kerala, and Andhra Pradesh with 6.2. Getting almost just 2/3 of what the national average is. Getting it? Now, we have to look into what are the issues which are leading to this particular kind of situation. Okay, what are the reasons surrounding key state GDP, in particularly whole of the southern area, is not as per which is required. Okay, now if you look into the issues, okay, the lower growth rate in this geographically southern areas compared to national average is low, as we have seen in the map. Some have nearly 6% compared to 9%. Okay, and what it is reaching, what is the issue? The issue is that this is leading to रीजनल डिस्पैरिटी. अब आप समझो, अगर किसी चीज का एवरेज 9 है और कोई 6 पे है तो कोई 12 पे भी होगा. गेटिंग इट? सो देयर विल बी सम स्टेट्स जो इतने परसेंटेज से ग्रो कर रहे हैं, सो बेसिकली वो इनसे ट्वाइस ग्रो कर रहे हैं. यस और नो? अगर ऐसा है तो जो स्टेट्स 12 परसेंट के स्पीड से ग्रो कर रहे हैं, अगर आप उनको देखोगे और ज्योग्राफिकली सदर्न एरियाज को देखोगे तो हमें क्या पता लगेगा? हमें ये पता लगेगा कि देयर आर इश्यूज, रीजनल डिस्पैरिटीज बढ़ेगी. जो रीजन रैपिडली ग्रो कर रहे हैं और जो रीजन लैग बिहाइंड कर रहे हैं, उनमें एक बड़ा गैप बढ़ता जाएगा. ओके, इसके अलावा आप क्या एनालाइज कर सकते हो? दैट those states which are contributing more, these states are turning out to be a drag down. Yes or no? एक तरीके के डेट्रीमेंटल इफेक्ट्स हो रहे हैं, पीछे रह जा रहे हैं लोग. हाँ है ना? Okay, now if you will see, there are n amount of skilled laborers also. Literacy rate is high. Getting it? So there are too many people in the labor force, so the labor force participation rate is also high, but still they are lacking behind. The reason of this particular scenario is the unemployment is rising in all these states. And if you ask me why the unemployment is rising, it's because the industrial and the manufacturing growth is very limited to only few parts of these regions, these states. So say if there are 30 districts, there are only 6-7 districts which have this kind of manufacturing capacity. The other regions are lacking behind. They are not able to provide that kind of impetus, that kind of opportunity to absorb the skilled labors. And when that case doesn't happen, अगर वो नहीं होता है तो what happens? उस केस में ये होता है that people start working towards, people will slowly and gradually look out for self-employment. Okay, now that self-employment could be casual, cannot be formal, so it's not being counted in the stats of employment. So we are seeing a huge amount of underemployment. Getting it? Further, if you will see, it also leads to lack of the underutilized potential that we are lacking to utilize our skilled labors, the productive skilled labors? Yes or no? If those people would have been contributing into the mainstream economy, they will have more positive impact. But as of now, they are failing to do so. And if these things continue, तो क्या होगा? As we discussed, regional disparities बढ़ेगी. If regional disparities एक level से ज़्यादा बढ़ जाती है, it often starts to question the peace, the harmony, the fraternity among the people of different states. Yes or no? Apart from that, with the states lacking behind in the growth rate, this also implies that the states might not be able to provide for that kind of welfare, for that kind of better living opportunities and living conditions, implying to either health, implying to either education or the infrastructure, both the physical and the social infrastructure. That will be lacking behind. Yes or no? They'll be lacking behind in the human development index. समझ आ रहा है? Apart from that, such kind of growth is not sustainable for the country. It's not inclusive. Yes or no? Because if you want a sustainable growth, you have to make sure that the growth of the country is well distributed. And you will have to aim for a long-term stability. You have to make sure that no one is lagging behind. Because if people are lagging behind, what further will happen? If there are limited opportunities in a particular area, that might lead to migration. Yes or no? A lot of people from the states like Bihar, Jharkhand are traveling all the way to Maharashtra and Gujarat. It will then again cause n number of social issues. Social issues like what? The old age people, they don't have anyone to take care of because the kids have traveled far away. Often there are some issues related to your mingling with that community to where they are traveling. So during just before COVID, if you have remember the scenario of Gujarat, where there was some mob violence happened because there of some rumors that some of the people, some of the workers coming from other states were involved in some kind of notorious activities. Right? Yes or no? So we have to make sure that migration needs to be contained. Employment needs to be, opportunities need to be provided in order for a long-term sustainable growth. In the long run, we need to check that we have what kind of job opportunities. Why the case of only fewer job opportunities, that too limited to few regional areas only? What kind of employment opportunities we can provide for the people of different sectors? For example, if I give you an idea, we can also think of creating. Now understand, in the rural areas, at least 100 days of employment they are getting. Those people who are unemployed are getting 100 days of employment in terms of Mahatma Gandhi Narega Act, MG Narega. Yes. So don't you think we can also provide some of this kind of opportunity in the urban areas as well? Yes or no? Some kind of urban unemployment for 100 days, 150 days. So that will not completely, but give a start to deal with this particular solution. Yes or no? Apart from that, we have to make sure that this shift to this casual labor or the self-employment needs to be checked by bringing more and more people to the formal economy. For example, if you will see in Telangana, the self-employment workforce increased by 8% and currently is 55.9%. We need to make sure even the self-employed people needs to be brought into some kind of formal economy by working on the aspect of gig economy. Okay? Yes or no? Apart from that, we have to make sure, see, from a very long term, our jobs are dominated by the service sector. Our manufacturing capacity is very much limited. Getting it? What I'm saying? That our jobs is very much limited to the service sector because our manufacturing capacity is very much limited. So the manufacturing growth is always lacking behind in terms of the growth in the service sector. And if you will see, the service sector also has a kind of limited potential to offer to. The service sector offers nowadays jobs like BPOs and all. Okay. But it's not a long-term solution if you will see. In order to make sure to utilize the opportunities, our current demography, and for next 15-20 odd years, which we have the most greatest of the opportunity in terms of our demography, needs to be maximally optimized. By what? By making sure that the government is spending on the manufacturing sector. And the government is working in those particular directions by schemes like what? Make in India. From a toy to our defense weaponry. We are trying to make more of them in India itself. Trying to make sure that we are self-reliant again. Then being depending and supplying the labor force outside. The labor opportunities outside. We are trying to make sure that India becomes the hub of the manufacturing of the global economy. Getting it? Yes or no? So those are the schemes, those are the steps. Think of other steps also, what we need to take in order to minimize this kind of regional disparity. Something like states collaboration, right? For example, we have lessons to learn. Each state has some kind of lessons to learn from the other state. And in order to maximize the slogan of Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, we need to make sure there is a collaboration. We need to work on the aspect of cooperative federalism. Getting it? I hope that's clear. If that is clear, kindly practice this mains question. Kindly note it down quickly. Okay. Now let's move on further. Now the next op-ed for today is the great abandonment of Afghanistan. So if you know, the whole of the US, whole of the Europe is trying to back out from this Afghanistan scenario. So the biggest player earlier in the Afghanistan soil, after the idea of withdrawal of US forces, the other prominent players also kept themselves aside of this, the great Afghanistan picture. Okay. At first, since India had a principle that they didn't want it to have any kind of negotiation or dealing with the Taliban, because the Indian idea was that they were pro people, pro democracy government. So they wanted to support the established Afghanistan government. Getting it? But now the picture is quite evidently clear that in no time soon that old regime is coming back. Right? So India has two options. Either it also keeps itself secluded, either it also keeps itself indifferent to whatsoever is going on in Afghanistan. But in the current geopolitical scenario, we must understand that there is nothing like indifference. Whatever is happening in any part of the country is going to be affecting, is going to be a challenge or an opportunity one way or the another for another country. Getting it? Now, what happened was the scenarios, if you will see, the reasons India needs to be an active player, the reason why India needs to rethink its strategy, how it's dealing with Afghanistan, and somehow India is starting to rethink by opening its consulates in Afghanistan again to make sure that the humanitarian relief can be reached out to the Afghanistan communities. And what is making India rethink its strategy is that if you understand the geopolitical realism, see, keeping the idealism aside that India does not want to have any kind of discussion or negotiation with the Taliban forces, the realism is that they are the truth of the today, right? So rather than keeping themselves sidelined of this whole scenario, what India can do better is that India can actually be an active participant, and it's very much important for whole of the regional stability, right? For India being a champion of human rights, be it the COVID case, be it some kind of terrorism case, be it some kind of natural disaster, India has always been a champion of the human rights. Yes or no? So in that particular case, it's very much evidently important that India should understand the particular geopolitical realism. Okay? And for that, India had started its technical mission, the humanitarian mission in the Kabul. Okay? It has reopened, which it was earlier closed, right? Apart from that, it is also important that if India sidelines itself from this whole geopolitical scenario, it is actually a very great opportunity for the Pakistan and China to influence this region. And India needs more allies in Asia rather than more enemies. With the current turmoil which is happening around in the and can futuristically happen in the very close neighborhood in terms of China and Pakistan, India need more and more allies. And they have to make sure that this Pakistan-China should not deepen up too much their engagement with the Talibans. Getting it? So India should also be an active player in the decision making of what's going around. It's also important in terms of the security conditions of India. As we all know about the portrayal or the image of Taliban, it is very much important that we have some kind of engagement for all the factions, that we can monitor what's the condition going on in Taliban to control the increasing terrorism in the world, to minimize the terrorist threats which can potentially increase if they try to sideline Afghanistan. Yes or no? I hope that's clear. Apart from that, if you will see, it's very much the case that India already has invested a lot. India has invested over 3 billion, 4 billion in developing the infrastructure of the Afghanistan, be it the Salma Dam, be it the Zarans Delaram highway. Getting it? So after investing so much into the social infrastructure, into the physical infrastructure of that country, India needs to make sure that it is reaping up its fruits. Yes or no? Getting it? It will be also important because those highways they were constructed. It was of critical importance for the connectivity from India to the Central Asian lands. Getting it? Apart from that, it is very much important for India, as we said, a champion of human rights. Okay? To increase its people to people ties, to help those people who are suffering, to provide that kind of supplies, the aid to those people, to enhance the goodwill among the all the Afghanistan community, keeping the futuristic reference in mind. Getting it? But if you will see, recently there has been some kind of news that India has been kind of hesitant in giving visas to the Afghanistan people. Now, why is this hesitancy? Very simplest of the reasons is the first comes the security concerns. Because giving visas without a proper government in Afghanistan, it could be a potentially that lead to infiltration of terrorist groups into the Indian lands. Getting it? It is said that there has been rumors, there has been intelligence which has been gathered by many of our agencies that this visa process can be exploited by various terrorist groups, by various Taliban linked elements. So that's where the skepticism is riding. That's where India is afraid to give visas. There is a hesitancy in giving visas to the Afghani people. Also, look into the political consideration. Right? The government is cautious that if unchecked visas are provided, if too many visas are provided, it could put India into a bad image for the Afghani Taliban group, because it could lead to a large scale migration. Getting it? And India does not have a very nice comprehensive refugee policy. India is not signatory to the 1951 UN refugee policy. Getting it? So in order to make sure that there are diplomatic relations which can be, which should be kept with the Taliban, it needs to make sure that India does not upset the Taliban for no reason. Okay? Because understand, giving visas is not just one instance case. It's a long-term issue. It involves that kind of humanitarian assistance which you will need to provide for rehabilitation of the refugees. It will lead to a huge amount of logistic and economic constraints on your economy. Providing visas is just the first step. However, it had a lot of financial and administrative constraint. Getting it? Now, going further, what India needs? India needs that it keeps on providing the humanitarian and the development aid to the people, to the Afghani people, to make sure to enhance its credibility among all the communities of the Afghan. Okay? It should support the Afghan refugees, the students, by giving them scholarships, by giving them the support. There should be an active civil society who should be working in that particular interest. Getting it? India also needs to bring other regional and the international partners into this picture. India needs to work with the like-minded countries, be it Iran, be it Russia, okay, be it the United Nations, be it the SCO, to make sure that there is a long-term stability in the Afghanistan. Okay, India need to make sure that it is increasing, it is bettering its ties, it is enhancing its people-to-people connectivity. Okay, great. Okay, now let's jump on to some of the prelims information. Okay, some of the prelims bites. Now, a decade after the establishment of the Nalanda University, another legendary, another ancient university is undergoing to be revived, which is none other than the Vikramshila University. Vikramshila University, which is in Bihar along the banks of Ganga, it's supposed to be revived very soon. Right? The university, which was started by King Dharampala back in 7th century, the king of Pala dynasty. Okay. And further supported and aided by a lot of kings later on. One of the most famous ones was the King Rampala, who made sure that the glory of this Vikramshila University reaches the 7 seas. Okay. Now, one of the most founding and the credible institutions of our art and architectural legacy, Vikramshila University was a very famous center for the Buddhist learning. Apart from Nalanda. Okay? Getting it? As a center of Buddhism learning, it was famous for the Tantrayana Buddhism. If you know, if you have not read about Buddhism, don't worry about what's Tantrayana Buddhism. But जब आप पढ़ेंगे तो आपको पता लगेगा there are some subsects of Buddhism. Okay? The Hinayana, the Theravada, the Tantrayana, all those are the subsects of the Buddhism. अभी हम उतनी deep में नहीं जाएंगे. But when you will understand this, you need to remember that it is a part of Tantrayana Buddhism. Okay? The n number of notable scholars जो आपके prelims के लिए काफी important होते हैं, something like Dipankara, okay, someone who is well renowned for reviving Buddhism in Tibet, was an alumni of Vikramshila University. Someone like Vashubandhu, okay, another great great alumni, a well renowned name, okay, or Taranath. These are one of the most famous alumni जिनका आप शायद NCERT में भी आपको नाम मिलेंगे. Getting it? Now, if we talk about the architectural features, the site has a stupa. I hope you understand that stupa is one of the most prominent Buddhist architecture. Okay. Then again, anything which you are not learning right now, as of now, don't get worried. Don't be too much anxious about it. That okay, what is stupa? I'm not aware about it. Getting it? Now, Vikramshila University was destroyed by one of the generals of Qutbuddin Aibak. Okay. During the 12th century, it was destroyed by whom? By Bakhtiyar Khilji. Bakhtiyar Khilji was one of the able generals of the Qutbuddin Aibak. Getting it? If you don't know Qutbuddin Aibak, you should know he died while playing a game. Okay. Now, moving forward, you need to learn about Nalanda University also, one of the most oldest residential universities, started in 5th century by Kumar Gupta of the Gupta dynasty. Then, just like all these big university had a lot of kings who were the patronage. You understand them, someone like a trustee. बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग थे who can be called trustees, जिन्होंने फंडिंग दी, जिन्होंने इनका रिवाइवल कॉन्स्टेंटली मेंटेन रखा. Getting it? Be it the king Harshvardhana, 7th century में थे, और prior to that, Ashoka. Getting it? Now, it was again, as you know, if you have read a bit of art and architecture, we're talking about the 3rd century, 4th century, 5th century, and all that. At that time, Buddhism was one of the most important of the religions. Okay, so all these centers were very much famous for what? For Buddhism learning. So we'll talk about the Nalanda. Gautam Buddha visited Nalanda in his time. Okay. If we talk about the notable teachers, Aryabhatta, as we know, one of the most renowned mathematicians, one of the most important jewels of this country. He was one of the most notable scholars, alumni, and then a teacher of the Nalanda University. Nagarjuna, a famous Buddhist philosopher, जिनकी books के बारे में आप पढ़ेंगे, right? Then Dignaga, Dharampala, a celebrated Brahmin scholar. Okay, so these are the famous people who have taught in the Nalanda school. Getting it? I hope that's clear. That's the prelims information from today's newspaper. Moving forward, another prelims information, the Janpith Award. Recently Janpith Award दिया गया है विनोद कुमार शुक्ला जी को. ओके, ये अवार्ड मिलने वाले छत्तीसगढ़ के ये पहले इंसान है. A very well known, renowned poet, writer, the first one to receive this award from Chhattisgarh. So basically, if you will see, it will lead to the development, the enthusiasm towards literature in the Chhattisgarh area. Someone as simple, as sensitive, work towards a different kind of writing style. Vinod Kumar Shukla ji has contributed significantly to a kind of redevelopment of the Hindi literature. Okay, अगर आप उनकी important novels के बारे में बात करेंगे तो that will be नौकर की कमीज, दीवार में खिड़की रहती थी, right, and खिलेगा तो देखेंगे. Ever if you have time, you can look into all these novels. Okay, now talking about the Janpith Award. Janpith Award is the highest literary honor in India. Annually, साल में हम इसे एक बार लिटरेरी कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटर्स को देते हैं. गेटिंग इट? नाउ क्या किसी भी लोग जो भी किसी भी लैंग्वेज में लिखते हैं उनको ये अवार्ड दिया जाता है? नहीं. इट्स गिवन टू द ऑथर्स who belong, who write from the language recognized under the constitution. Okay, and apart from that, who are writing in English, the Indian people who are writing in English. Okay, getting it? So this award has been in practice since 1965. 1961, it was started by the Bharatiya Janpith Cultural Organization. It is given exclusively to the Indian citizens for their exceptional contribution in the creative literary work. So all the constitutionally recognized language along with English, the 22 constitutionally 22 scheduled languages, if you are author in one of those languages, you might probably get this award. Getting it? The award promotes Indian literature. It makes sure that those people who have had that kind of remarkable impact on the writings are awarded, are celebrated. Getting it? And those who win the award gets 21 lakh in cash, a citation, and a bronze statue of goddess Vagdevi, the Saraswati. Getting it? If you know, the deity of Saraswati is associated with literature, with knowledge, with wisdom. Okay, moving forward, The last news we are going to be discussing about is the Sahyog portal. So recently, X, or earlier known as Twitter, has recently challenged the government's decision that Sahyog portal was created to make sure that the government can automatically notify all these social media houses, all the content platform, in order if they want to them to remove some of the content under the IT Act, right? So that it makes sure that there is no particular kind of cybercrime or particular kind of rumor, something which can be easily stopped. Okay, but the Twitter has refused, okay, to comply with the government directions. Okay, why they have complained? Because it somehow goes against the idea of free expression. Getting it? So the Twitter is going to be looking into it. Let's see what kind of judgment is coming from it. Okay, I hope it's clear. So the important thing which you need to follow from here is the Sahyog portal. Okay, that's it for today. Try to attempt the mains question. Try to look into it, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Take care.
You are currently the only person in this conference.